That cloudier look will become more prevalent through Saturday and Sunday, limiting frost and fog by night, but staying dry.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, as Boris Johnson's premiership hangs in the balance and Plan BS measures finally get the chop, I'll bring you all the best analysis of a seismic day in Westminster from major Tory figures and the country's top commentators. Are your political views having a disastrous effect on your romantic life? Well, writer Emily Hill opens up about the frenzied reaction after declaring herself too right-wing to find love. Plus, a trio of Dan Wootton Tonight favourites give their unfiltered takes on the world. GBNews star Nigel Farage, Spiked Online's Brendan O'Neill, and columnist extraordinaire Rod Liddle. And as ever, I break down the day's top headlines with my superstar panel. Columnist and broadcaster Emily Carver, social media activist Adam Brooks, and political commentator Daisy McAndrew. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton tonight. As an ambush by both a treacherous turncoat and a sage and loyal Conservative leave Boris in a perilous position.
Can I start by warmly welcoming the Honourable Member for Bury South to his new place?
You have sat there too long for all the good you have done. In the name of God, go.
I'll explain why patience is key for a Tory party seemingly primed for betrayal in my digest. Then my superstar panel will give their view on a wild day in Westminster tonight. The columnist and broadcaster Emily Carver, publican and campaigner Adam Brooks, and political and royal commentator Daisy McAndrew. With chaos ensuing and Boris losing control, should he jump before he's pushed? Former Conservative Minister David Mellor says his position is untenable, but his opponent at the dispatch box here tonight is ex-Boris advisor Colvare Ranger, who thinks his former boss has got all the big calls right and must stay in number 10. They'll go head-to-head in the clash at 9:20. Amid the mutiny, the PM rediscovered his libertarian roots today by ditching Plan BS measures. Will lockdown fanatics now slyly distance themselves from the damage they caused us? Well, I've seen it happen already, and Spiked Online's chief political writer Brendan O'Neill says we need to remember those who tried to destroy our way of life and hold them responsible. He's tonight's outsider. As we're warned 60,000 immigrants will land on our shores this year, will the government's promise of deploying the armed forces help fix the crisis? Well, Nigel Farage has some choice words for what he's dubbed the Royal Navy taxi service in What the Farage at 9:30. And as Brexit helps Britain's economy shrug off the price of the pandemic, isn't it time everyone hailed our freedom from the EU shackles? The uncompromising Rod Liddle sticks two fingers up at Ramona's as he brings the cold, hard facts in Uncancelled at 10:40. Is there only love for lefties in this woke world? Find out why this right-wing Daily Mail columnist thinks her political views are making her unlucky in love. That's at 10:20. Should Red Wall MPs who happily jumped on the Boris Brexit bandwagon be more loyal to the PM amid arguments that they were only elected because of him? We'll debate that in the media buzz. Plus, here's the first glimpse at the most expensive TV series of all time.
3 rings for the Elven Kings under the sky.
Another sneak peek of the brand new Lord of the Rings coming later. Plus, I'll bring you a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Will they be good or bad for Boris? And we'll crown the next greatest Britain and Union Jackass. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though. Hallelujah! England is unmuzzled. Look, it took far too long. We should never have had Plan BS, as I call it, in the first place. And you know, I've spoken for weeks about the unnecessarily hysterical reaction from the political and media establishment to the Omicron variant, a response which has actually destroyed lives and livelihoods. But today is one for celebration. Under intense pressure from the brave Tory rebels who voted against Plan BS measures, Boris Johnson announced all of them, including economy-destroying work-from-home orders and liberty-destroying vaccine passports, will be dumped from next Thursday. But most crucially, mask mandates will no longer be enforced by law.
Having looked at the data carefully, the Cabinet concluded that once regulations lapse, the government will no longer mandate the wearing of face masks anywhere. In the country at large, we will continue to suggest the use of face coverings in enclosed or crowded spaces, particularly when you come into contact with people you don't normally meet, but we will trust the judgment of the British people and no longer criminalise anyone who chooses not to wear one.
That is Boris finally standing up to the sage hysterics who loved masks as a constant visual trigger that we are in some sort of constant health emergency, even though the ridiculous dirty cloths actually do very little to protect anyone. But it's only England unmuzzled thus far. The leaders of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland must now follow suit, and we'll cover the end of Plan BS, but also the political crisis continuing to engulf the PM with my superstar panel throughout the show tonight. Let's take a look at them. The columnist and broadcaster, Emily Garver. We already saw him earlier for some reason. Stealing my thunder, Adam Brooks. What's that all about? And the political and royal commentator, Daisy McAndrew. But before all of that, the news at 9 with Tamsin Roberts.
Dan, thank you. Here are the top stories from the GB newsroom. The Health Secretary says the Omicron variant is in retreat as he confirmed plans to lift Plan B restrictions in England next week. At a COVID briefing, Sajid Javid said the guidance to work from home will end immediately. Face masks won't be required in public places from next Thursday, and they'll no longer be mandatory in classrooms from tomorrow. Speaking to GB News, Joe Campion from the National Deaf Children's Society says the news is a relief.
We've always said that public health needs to be a priority, but obviously the specific needs of deaf children matter too. And this has been a really difficult time for them, and they've waited a really long time for it to be safe for face masks to not be used in classrooms. And so we're just relieved on their behalf that they no longer need to face this really challenging situation.
Downing Street says Boris Johnson expects to lead the Tories in the next general election and will fight any vote of no confidence launched against him. It follows the MP for Bury South, Christian Wakeford, defecting from the Conservatives to the Labour Party. The Prime Minister claims the Tories will regain the seat at the next election, but former Brexit Secretary David Davis says it's time for Boris Johnson to step down.
I expect my leaders to shoulder the responsibility for the actions they take. Yesterday, he did the opposite of that. So I'll remind him of a quotation altogether too familiar to him of Leo Amery to Neville Chamberlain. You have sat there too long for all the good you have done. In the name of God, go.
A man has been remanded in custody after appearing in court charged with the murder of 23-year-old Aisling Murphy in Ireland. The schoolteacher was killed near a canal in Tullamore last Wednesday. 31-year-old Joseph Pushka was heckled as he was brought from a police car to a special court sitting in County Offaly. A second man who was arrested in connection with the murder has been released without charge. British Airways has joined Emirates and Air India in cancelling a number of US flights over 5G safety concerns. It follows fears that transmissions from signal towers near US airports could disrupt planes' navigation systems. AT&T and Verizon responded by pausing the rollout of 5G to avoid further flight disruptions. US-based aviation journalist Greg Pollock told GB News why carriers are concerned about the signals.
Might affect what's called the radar altimeter, which essentially more or less tells the pilot how far away he is from the ground in bad weather, particularly when visibility is not that good.
This is GB News on TV, online and DAB+ radio. Now it's back to Dan Wootton Tonight.
It was the tale of two Boris hitmen today. One an utter chancer and charlatan who has betrayed his voters. The other a sage and loyal Conservative whose voice should be listened to. Both interventions make the Prime Minister's position more perilous. But as I've been warning throughout the so-called Partygate crisis, the Tories must be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's no obvious successor to Boris. But first, to the traitors. The decision by Bury South MP Christian Wakeford, maybe I should actually call him Christian Wokeford for joining woke Labour, his decision to quit the Tories and join the Labour Party just before PMQs, is actually one of the most disloyal political acts in recent memory. He is a man devoid of morality, and if he had any, he would immediately stand down and force a by-election. After all, he previously sponsored a bill that would have made it possible to hold a recall by-election when an MP defects from the party that they were elected to. But now he's done that himself. I mean, it blows my mind. And let me be clear, Wakeford's defection is out of nothing more than personal ambition. He certainly doesn't support the party who he joined today, wearing a mask and blazoned with the Union Jack flag, the sort of patriotic gesture most Labour MPs sneer at. It would appear there are certainly no fans of his either, with Young Labour tweeting after his defection, Christian Wakeford MP should not be admitted to the Labour Party. He has consistently voted against the interests of working class people, for the £20 universal credit cut, for the Nationality and Borders Bill and for the Police and Crime Bill. Young Labour does not welcome him. And Wakeford knows that Labour is not fit to govern. He said as much himself back in 2020 during a Commons debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Welcome to the modern Labour Party, more concerned about stopping the deportation of foreign criminals than keeping our streets safe.
Same party, mate. And on a separate occasion in September 2020, he said Labour seek to hold back our opportunities, as they have over the past 4 years, in a bid to reduce the great ship Britannia to nothing more than a sluggish canal barge. Labour was led then, as it is now, by a bloke called Keir Starmer. And Wakeford has joined that sluggish canal barge. And his voters who, by the way, voted for the Tory party for the first time, most of them under Boris Johnson, should not forget it. It's unforgivable political betrayal. Far more difficult for Boris, though, was this devastating moment during PMQs, where highly respected Tory grandee and an ardent Brexiteer, David Davis, a man I respect a lot, used a historical quote calling for the PM to go.
I expect my leaders to shoulder the responsibility for the actions they take. Yesterday, he did the opposite of that. So I'll remind him of a quotation altogether too familiar to him of Leo Amery to Neville Chamberlain. You have sat there too long for all the good you have done. In the name of God, go.
And that was a hard moment to come back from, and the PM, who had actually performed better today before this moment, was momentarily left dumbstruck.
I must say to the right honourable gentleman, I don't know what he's talking about, but what I can tell him, I don't know what quotation he's alluding to that he's referring. But what I can tell him is that I think I've told this House repeatedly throughout this pandemic, I take full responsibility for everything done in this government and throughout the pandemic.
I mean, I actually felt for the Prime Minister there, and it must have been a punch to the guts. Will Boris fight the next election? Probably not. Is now the time for him to go for the sake of the Conservative Party and the country? Definitely not. Ironically, a quick confidence vote, which will be forced if 54 Tory MPs write letters of no confidence to the 1922 committee, could actually end up being the best thing for Boris. If he wins, which at the moment he almost certainly would, another vote could not be triggered for 12 months, giving him a chance to shore up his leadership. And while she would probably back Boris as PM, if he ran naked around Buckingham Palace, the Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, makes a fair point that a leadership contest at this moment risks leading to a Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Making an impassioned defence to the Times today, she said, "The people who are doing this are being disloyal to the Prime Minister, the party, their constituents and the wider country. They should judge the Prime Minister on his record of achievement. We have more people boosted, tested and more antivirals than any country in the EU. We have the most open and fastest growing economy in the G7. He has led us out of a global pandemic to the other side. We have a responsibility to govern in a way that is stable and secure." Now, many of you will know I was a supporter of Boris Johnson. No other Prime Minister could have delivered Brexit against the wishes of the destructive civil service blob. But I lost some faith as he botched the response to the pandemic, destroying the economy and health system with disastrous lockdowns and restrictions. But today's scrapping of Plan BS shows there could be reason for hope. There is no proof any successor would improve the party's poll ratings or be able to offer a better chance of victory at the next general election. Patience, not something that's on display in Westminster much these days, but patience right now is required. Let me bring my superstar panel in now. It is the columnist and broadcaster Emily Carver, the social media sensation Adam Brooks, and the political and royal media and royal commentator Daisy McAndrew. So, Daisy, you are a veteran of these types of political circuses. What's your read on this? Because Andrew Bridget on the show last night was absolutely confident that there were going to be 54 letters put in today. Actually, it looks like this defection from Wakeford has actually made some of those Tory MPs take a moment, and it could have actually helped Boris Johnson.
I think it will definitely have done that in the short term. And also, thank you for calling me a veteran. That's another word of saying, a massively old bag.
No, Daisy, don't be silly.
But it is true that there have only been a handful of defections in the last 20 years, and I have been around for most of them. And actually, when you see them close up, they're horrible. And I don't mean it's a horrible thing to do. I mean, for the person doing it, it's terrifying. They are vilified. They are spat at. I mean, literally.
But don't you think this was a horrible thing to do? He is a traitor.
I think if you look at his voting record, actually, he has been incredibly critical of this government. I mean, he voted, against a lot of measures, and he definitely was positioning himself on the left of the party. And I interviewed him a couple of months ago, and I actually found him very believable when he was talking about his beliefs. And we asked him about calling Owen Paterson the C word, which is, he admitted on the radio where I was interviewing him that he absolutely did. And he said, "I'm really sorry. I'd broken my ankle. I was high on codeine," and he didn't say it was an excuse. He said, "I was absolutely livid that this man kept saying I would do it all over again." So I think he genuinely is somebody who feels things strongly, and he is not going to have a happy time now.
Emily, you think Christian Wakeford is a scumbag, right?
Well, I think he's certainly a chancer. He's totally acting in his own self-interest here. He's seen polls that have shown that his tiny minority would be usurped and the Labour Party could win back his seat. It's as simple as that. But he's concerned that he'll lose his seat, so he's going to Labour, a party that he called a bunch of see you next Tuesdays, a party that he said should not be able to lead this country and would not be able to lead this country. Christian Wakeford is just taking his chances, and to me, and I think the country, he looks like a mug, and there must be a by-election if he has any honour at all, because the people of that constituency did not vote for him, the person. They voted for Boris Johnson.
Adam Brooks, surely if he had any morals, and I think this is a bloke devoid of that, actually, but if he did, he would step down and he would allow the voters of Bury South to have a chance.
He has to step down. How can you vote for this previously and then go and do the opposite?
But that's what happens. The only person who did that was Douglas Carswell when he joined UKIP, and he went on to win, and Mark Reckless did the same. But he doesn't even know whether he'd be the Labour candidate.
Exactly.
And I do feel really sorry for the Labour Party. I feel really sorry for them in that constituency.
If I'm a voter in that constituency and I know he's voted against...
and you voted for Boris.
Right.
And you may have voted for Boris for the first time because of Brexit. And you certainly didn't vote for the Labour Party.
Right. I think it's mad. If he doesn't step down, he's shown his morals.
He's 37, so we can't write him off. We can't write off his political career. But it does seem like this is an utterly silly move, and it could well be the end of his political career, because who would trust him and who would vote for him?
And he does love this C word, doesn't he?
They clearly don't know what he believes in. You can't go from being conservative socialist overnight.
But you can't call Labour a bunch of CUNTs and then join them.
Don't join them. No,
it's ridiculous. This is almost comedy. It's a comedy sketch.
I tell you one community I do feel really sorry for in Bury South. There is, outside of London, that's one of the biggest Jewish communities in the country, and one of the main reasons that Jewish community turned away from the Labour Party was the anti-Semitism.
Exactly.
He took a really, really strong stance on that.
And now he's surrounded by them. Well, now he's in a party with them.
Well, he says that Keir Starmer, has tackled that, and he has better than his predecessor. I think we can all agree with that. That's probably faint praise.
But he is in a caucus with a load of those people. Look, breaking tonight, Boris Johnson has started his big push to turn the public's focus away from party scandals and remind them that he and his government have got the big important calls right during the pandemic. Let me share with you what he has tweeted in the past hour. So this is the Prime Minister. We were the first nation in the world to administer a vaccine and one of the fastest in Europe to roll it out. This was because we made the big call to pursue our own vaccine procurement outside of the EMA. We made the tough decision to open up last summer when others said that shouldn't happen, and kept open this winter while others locked down. As a result, we have the most open economy and society in Europe and the fastest growing economy in the G7. We're the first to emerge from the Omicron wave because we focused our NHS on delivering the fastest booster campaign in Europe. And it is because of the extraordinary booster campaign, together with the way the public have responded to the Plan B measures, that we can return to Plan A in England and allow Plan B regulations to expire. Confronted by the nation's biggest challenge since the Second World War and the worst pandemic since 1918, any government would get some things wrong, but this government got the big things right. Emily Cover, I wish I'd heard a bit more of this fighting spirit from Boris Johnson a week ago, when he seemed to cower away in number 10 Downing Street and let the wave of bad publicity overwhelm him, because there is a good story to tell. And look, we've disagreed with a lot of things that Boris have done during the pandemic, but there is a good story to tell today.
That's true. But at the same time, he's allowed the media, in my view, and something that I wrote in my column this week, to overplay their hand in all this.
Yes, I so agree.
Maybe not the vast majority, but I think a large portion of the public are sick and tired of this feeding frenzy around the Prime Minister. yes, he's got things wrong. Yes, he's shown himself to be a hypocrite and perhaps a liar. That is true. But equally, look at the alternative, look at the opposition who are calling for more and more restrictions. He's done exactly the right thing in announcing today that restrictions are over.
And you say, Emily, I saw you say earlier today, you're bored of Partygate. You don't want to hear another word about it. Explain why.
Well, I think it's because and I think a lot of people share this view, that it seems to me that there are a lot of members of the media and, of course, the opposition who have always found Boris Johnson unpalatable. They've always had a visceral hatred of the man, and they will take any chance to latch on to these events and make it known and make a concerted effort to make him resign.
Quick final word to you, Daisy.
But, Emily, wouldn't you agree it's not just those people, it's not just the media or the opposition who hate him. His own parliamentary party are not that keen on him. He's the least popular Prime Minister within his own party.
Currently.
The wider party like him very much. The parliamentary party never has. So I think...
Exactly. But I think letters are being withdrawn as we speak, because I do think that actually people are looking at the facts, looking at what's happened and been announced today on COVID, and thinking, actually, maybe we don't have anyone waiting in the wings, and perhaps we might lose...
Let's give Boris another go here, I agree. Emily Calvert, Adam Brooks, Daisy McAndrew, thank you so much. My superstar panel are here all night. Coming up, though, with up to 65,000 migrants expected to reach the UK this year, will the government's plan to deploy the armed forces do anything to stem the crisis? Nigel Farage gives his verdict very shortly. But up next, should Boris Johnson step down with dignity rather than risk being ousted in a no-confidence vote? Tory grandee David Mellor does battle with the PM's ex at Pfizer Colville Ranger in the clash, and I want to know your verdict too. That's most important to me. Email dan@gbnews.uk, tweet me using the handle @gbnews. We've got our poll running there too. I'll reveal the results after the break.
Hello again. Skies have cleared widely across the UK, and that means overnight a widespread frost, and there'll be some wintry flurries in some spots, mainly for the north of Scotland because of the Arctic wind that has arrived now behind this cold front. That cold front cleared the cloud and some outbreaks of rain earlier in the day, and now we've got clearer but colder weather across all parts. And under those widely clear skies, temperatures will rapidly fall overnight. We'll keep a bit more of a wind in the far north and east, and that wind will drive further wintry flurries into the north of Scotland and for parts of eastern England as well. But where we've got clear skies elsewhere, a widespread frost, as low as -5 across sheltered parts of Scotland. In the far north of Scotland, a bit more cloud and some of those snow flurries to begin things on Thursday, perhaps a centimetre or so at lower levels, more so on the higher ground, and likewise for the east coast of England. Soon enough, those showers ease away. Widely clear skies or sunshine for many on Thursday afternoon, but temperatures lower than recent days because of that Arctic air, and feeling even colder if you're in the wind that will be in the north and the east. The wind does ease a little overnight and it changes direction subtly, but for most it's light winds, clear skies, and with cold air in place, temperatures falling once again. Widely below freezing across much of the UK, and in parts of southern England as low as -5 Celsius, so in some places the coldest night of the winter. But in the north and the west, by the early hours I think we're going to start to see a bit more cloud arrive from the Atlantic. That will limit the frost in the northwest, and it'll be a grey day in western Scotland with some drizzle over the hills. Elsewhere, brighter skies, the best of the sunshine in the east, but that cloudier look will become more prevalent through Saturday and Sunday, limiting frost and fog by night, but staying dry.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Nigel Farage, Rod Liddle and Brendan O'Neill on the way. Big show ahead, but time now for The Clash. Today was Boris Johnson's first appearance in the House of Commons since his grovelling apology last week for attending a garden party at Number 10 in May 2020. The PM faced calls for his resignation from opposition MPs, with the Leader of No Opposition, Keir Starmer, once again leading the charge. But unlike last week, Boris did not cower away and came out swinging in his defence.
Mr. Speaker, if the Prime Minister thinks the only accusation he faces that he once had a beer with the takeaway, then Operation Save Big Dog is in deeper trouble than I thought. If a Prime Minister misleads Parliament, should they resign?
Let's be absolutely clear. The right honourable gentleman is continuing to ask a series of questions which he knows will be fully addressed by the inquiry. He is wasting this House's time. He's wasting the people's time, Mr. Speaker. He continues to be completely irrelevant, Mr. Speaker, because we have an inquiry. We have an inquiry, Mr. Speaker, and I'm not going to anticipate that inquiry any further.
Despite finding his backbone again, the PM still finds himself facing the prospect of a no-confidence vote, and that's even before the release of the Sue Gray report. So some people are saying, should Boris Johnson just resign rather than risk being ousted? And that's what I want to know from you today. Or should he stick it out? Because it might be OK. Send me your thoughts to Dan at gbnews.uk. Tweet me at gbnews. And we've got our poll running there now. But to help you decide, I'm joined by former Conservative Minister David Mellor and former advisor to Boris Johnson during his time as London Mayor, Colvare Ranger. Colvare, you say no, Boris Johnson should hold on. If it's inevitable, though, that he's going to have to leave in the end, would it not be better for him to resign with dignity?
Good evening, Dan, and to your viewers. But most politicians have to leave in the end. The question is when that end comes, and this is not really the moment for Boris Johnson's premiership to end. Why do I say that? Well, yes, he's having difficulty, and yes, there have been problems. Yes, we're all in this together. We haven't liked what we've heard about parties and gardens and everything else. But there is a bigger picture that the British public have to take into account, and not just what MPs want to consider is happening in the Westminster Village. This is a Prime Minister that has brought direction to the country. He applied his clarity and his vision when Brexit was paralysing us and a previous Conservative Prime Minister, and we all felt like we were going nowhere, hearing endlessly for months, if not years, about what we could or couldn't do as a country. He cut through that. He won a first majority for a generation as a Conservative Prime Minister, a large stonking majority, and he has led his party and this government through the biggest challenge, except for a war, the pandemic, and successfully in a global context. Now, we have to put that into the perspective around everything else that is going on around the Prime Minister. He, yes, has been identified as having, people out there who have never liked him within the party, but more broadly in politics, because he's unique. He is very different to your standard politician. I've spent 4 years where I sat right next to him and realised that he's a particularly special kind of politician who does achieve things that other politicians can't do. And that's why the Conservative Party need to value that going forward. OK, well, that's a very good staunch defence. David Mellor, great to have you. Why is Colvare Ranger wrong?
Well, I don't think he's wrong about everything. I mean, I've always been a supporter of Boris's. I was a strong supporter of Boris's at the election. And I was very pleased when he got a majority of 80. I think the problem for Boris Johnson is he has not found it easy to survive the scrutiny of being Prime Minister and not found it easy to be Prime Ministerial. I mean, I have to say, as someone who spent a lot of time in Downing Street under two previous Conservative Prime Ministers, Margaret Thatcher for 9 years and John Major for a couple of years after that, I can't imagine Number 10 being turned into a sort of students' drinking den the way that it was during these parties when the rest of the country were forbidden to actually consort with each other. And parties happening the night before, the Queen, who had to spend this time all by herself, because she obeyed the rules, she was by herself. Lots of people in Downing Street were drinking a lot of cheap wine brought in suitcases. It's not a good look. Now, the problem for Boris is that he doesn't appear to be someone who thinks that the rules apply to him, and there are endless examples of that. But the real problem with Boris, one of the reasons why I think this time probably the game is up for Boris, is what is coming down the pipe. I mean, we're talking about these parties in May 2020. I'm much more concerned with what's going to happen in May 2022 and thereafter, because we've just had the first sign of quite profound economic shock that is coming our way, the highest inflation for 30 years. And we know we've got the highest burden of taxation for 70 years. That's a gift from Boris. And the worry that there has to be is with public expenditure out of control during Boris's time, some of it down to the fact of the pandemic, some of it money just thrown away. And the problem for Boris is he isn't much of a conservative when it comes to economic policy. And the question, therefore, is this an opportunity for Boris to go now because his credibility has been so badly dented? Or are we going to give him another couple of years to make a big mess of the economy, which would then profoundly dish the Conservative Party?
OK, lots to pick up on there. But, Colville, I want you to go back to one of David's earlier points, which is that what happened in Downing Street in May 2020 is just too egregious for the public to get over, because we will always remember the hell that the government put us through during that first lockdown and the later lockdowns. And David's point is just that actually folk won't get over that. Do you understand that, Colville, and why it might make it impossible for BJ to continue?
Dan, I completely understand the point David's making, and that you and I, and probably everybody, shares, because we were all in this together. We were all trying to obey the rules. So this is a very personal point.
But we weren't, were we? And that's the point.
Well, we were trying to. We were all trying to, let's be honest. And probably some of us may have skirted around them at times. But I think, yes, those who make the rules should stick by them. There's an inquiry into this. I don't want to repeat the line that they have to wait to the Sue Gray inquiry comes out.
Please don't.
To see what it says. But I also think, there are deep, dark moments for all governments. If we think about expenses scandals, morality scandals, cash for questions,
Iraq, anybody?
I was going to say, so there are moments when political parties and their leaders really suffer at the hands of public judgment and media scrutiny, not just Boris Johnson. And I also understand what David says about Boris being challenged by conforming to Number 10. Well, let me just say this. People have responded to Boris Johnson throughout his political career because of the kind of unique figure he is and personality. And he does get things done. Now, he needs a good team around him. He needs people who will...
Maybe he needs to rehire you, Colville, because he does need some better people in at Number 10. But David, look, I just want final word to you. I want you to put on your political strategist cap, because I know that you know better how the Conservative Party works behind the scenes. And my feeling is that it's too early anyway for a confidence vote in Boris Johnson, because he would almost certainly win at this point. Nobody has come around one potential successor at this point. And obviously, if he were to win a confidence vote, say next week, it would be another year before the next vote could be forced. So isn't it much better for all of these folk just to calm down, see how the next few weeks play out?
No, because I just think it's Boris's fault that this crisis has come upon us. John Curtis, very probably our finest apologist, said that when you look at the number of people who voted Tory 2 years ago, who are now rejecting the Conservative Party, it's almost inconceivable that the Conservative Party can get them back in sufficient numbers to win another general election. The problem for Boris, I mean, there's so many problems for Boris. He allows charisma to actually overwhelm the need for hard work. You know, Boris has never defined what his prime ministership is all about. He says he's got Brexit done. And by the way, I was in favour of Brexit, but what he's got done is the technical removal of this country from the EU. The idea that somehow the heaven on earth that was promised during the referendum has happened certainly hasn't happened. And I do think someone at some point has got to address this business that I've raised about the economy.
I understand. And you've both made fascinating points. Thank you so much for being here. Former Tory Minister David Maller and one of the advisors to Boris Johnson during his time as London Mayor, Colville Ranger. Thank you so much. So who do you agree with? Well, Janet on email says, Boris has saved this country by thinking ahead with the vaccine. If the man is not left alone now, he is heading for a breakdown. You forget, he had the election, Brexit, COVID and the Europeans causing all this trouble. Yes, everyone makes mistakes, but Cummings is viciously getting his own back. It's time we got on with life and stopped all this nastiness. I'm sure many viewers will agree with Janice on that. Taylor says he should call a general election and see what the country really thinks of his Conservative Party. And Paul, via Twitter, says this is the kick up the backside that Boris needs and hopefully gets back on track. Your verdict now in. And it's an interesting one. Only 30% of you agree that Boris should resign rather than risking being ousted in a no-confidence vote. 70% of you say that after what's happened today, he should fight on. And I've got to be honest with you. I think after the events of the past 24 hours, I think after that ridiculous defection from Wakeford, I believe Boris Johnson's position at this time is strengthened. But we will see. Coming up, as the government finally appears to put lockdowns behind them, will high-profile figures who banged the drum for quarantine pretend they were on the side of liberty all along? Spiked Online's Brendan O'Neill worries so, and he'll discuss that in The Outsider at 9:45. But first, with nearly 1,000 people already crossing the channel in January and 65,000 now expected by the government by the end of the year, will the deployment of armed forces make a jot of difference to the migrant crisis? Now, everyone else might have forgotten this story because they're so obsessed with the goings-on at Westminster, but we haven't here on GB News, and Nigel Farage here with the latest straight after the break.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
What the Farage time now with GB News star Nigel Farage. Now, one of Boris Johnson's Operation Red Meat announcements designed to appease his backbench mutineers was that the armed forces were going to take control of the growing Channel crisis. But isn't this just more talk from the government, as Priti Patel has already been warned that up to 65,000 migrants could cross the Channel and into our country this year? That's more than double the record 28,300 people who crossed last year. And it could actually be worse than that, as 168 were intercepted or rescued attempting to cross on Tuesday alone. So, Nigel, the latest load of migrants has brought the total this year to nearly 1,000. That's in 19 days in January. I mean, this is an incredibly worrying situation. It's interesting, isn't it, Nigel? All of a sudden, there's political drama at Westminster, so the rest of the mainstream media isn't covering this, but the crisis continues.
Yeah, I mean, cast your mind back down to a dark and distant age, pre-Partygate. So we're only going back a few weeks, really. And there was an issue already hurting Boris Johnson's premiership in the Red Wall constituencies, and it was illegal immigration. Now, we've had illegal immigration in the back of trucks and in goodness knows, refrigerated lorries, everything. But somehow there's a sheer visibility about people in inflatable dinghies crossing the English Channel. And they were livid in the Red Wall seats because they voted Brexit, lifelong Labour voters. They voted Brexit because they wanted to get back control of our borders. And they believed with the Brexit vote it would happen. They voted for Boris in 2019, thinking that was it, we're back in control, and what they've seen is wholesale abuse. So he was in trouble on this issue already. 28,500 people came last year, 3 times the number that had come in 2020. And as you know, I was out there in the Channel day after day tracking this because I wanted to make this a national media story. This is prior, by the way, to GB News launching, when the others wouldn't even touch it.
Yeah, I remember.
And Priti Patel, the embattled Home Secretary, came up with an idea 18 months ago. We'll send the Navy in. And the public went, yes, please. This is fantastic. 71% of all voters approved of the Royal Navy going into the Channel. Now, an embattled Prime Minister, Operation Red Meat over the weekend, Save Big Dog, or whatever you want to call it, decided they'd reheat some popular ideas. So the Prime Minister now says the Royal Navy is going into the Channel. Will it make a difference? Right. Here are the facts. Unless the rules of engagement change, namely that we can actually physically take people back to France, and that's not been done, all you're doing is replacing the Border Force taxi service with the Royal Naval taxi service. All they will do is scoop up migrants in the Channel, bring them into Dover for processing, and this at a time when Putin could be on the verge of invading Ukraine, and there is a naval component here in the Black Sea. This at a time when China is becoming ever more bellicose about Taiwan, and this at a time with a Royal Navy that after 11 years of Conservative government has been slashed to the bone. It is a total waste of Royal Naval resources. It is ineffective in every way unless the rules of engagement change. It is yet another example of Boris Johnson telling people what he thinks they want to hear, not worrying that delivery will never happen. It is a joke.
The problem is, Nigel, though, even if Boris survives the next couple of months, these numbers could end up finishing him off. I mean, according to the Daily Telegraph, this 65,000 figure is actually a planning assumption now within Whitehall. So they just believe that it is a fact that 65,000 migrants will
Dan,
cross the channel this year.
You've missed something. They found a solution. And this has had no coverage on the BBC or Sky or ITV. So let's do it now and do it properly. Last Friday, under cover of darkness, the Immigration Minister, Tom Pursglove, announced that asylum seekers, those who have illegally come to Britain and have waited up to a year for their claim to be processed, can now work legally in the British economy in the care sector. A care sector that has lost 30 to 40,000 staff because they refused to have the vaccine and therefore have been sacked. So for the first time ever, we've got the British government effectively giving amnesties to those that cross the English Channel. And the number that Pursglove mentioned was 32,000. 32,000 people who've come via this route will be able to go on PAYE. Oh, no visa required or anything like that, but to work legally on PAYE within the British employment system. This has never, ever happened before in the history of our country. The fact the other broadcasters won't touch this issue takes us back to the origins of why I first went out into the English Channel. And I tell you what, whether Boris survives or not, whatever the knock-on effect of Partygate is, this issue on its own will cost the Tories the next general election unless they get a leader who actually has got the courage to stand up for why people gave them an 80-seat majority.
Strong analysis as ever. Thank you so much, Nigel. And of course, we will continue to cover this very important story here on GB News. Nigel back at 7 o'clock tomorrow. Although if you missed him earlier on tonight, you can catch the show at midnight. And it was a good one tonight, let me tell you. After the break, should the government axe plans to sack unvaccinated workers? I'll ask my panel as the media buzz returns. But first, will we begin to see high-profile lockdown advocates pretend they were always on the side of liberty? Brendan O'Neill warns to be vigilant of changing stories amid a welcome shift in COVID attitudes. He's up next in The Outsider. See you in a few minutes.
Hello again. Skies have cleared widely across the UK, and that means overnight a widespread frost, and there'll be some wintry flurries in some spots, mainly for the north of Scotland because of the Arctic wind that has arrived now behind this cold front. That cold front cleared the cloud and some outbreaks of rain earlier in the day, and now we've got clearer but colder weather across all parts. And under those widely clear skies, temperatures will rapidly fall overnight. We'll keep a bit more of a wind in the far north and east, and that wind will drive further wintry flurries into the north of Scotland and for parts of eastern England as well. But where we've got clear skies elsewhere, a widespread frost, as low as -5 across sheltered parts of Scotland. In the far north of Scotland, a bit more cloud and some of those snow flurries to begin things on Thursday, perhaps a centimetre or so at lower levels, more so on the higher ground, and likewise for the east coast of England. Soon enough, those showers ease away. Widely clear skies or sunshine for many on Thursday afternoon, but temperatures lower than recent days because of that Arctic air and feeling even colder if you're in the wind that will be in the north and the east. The wind does ease a little overnight and it changes direction subtly, but for most it's light winds, clear skies and with cold air in place, temperatures falling once again. Widely below freezing across much of the UK and in parts of southern England as low as -5 Celsius, so in some places the coldest night of the winter. But in the north and the west, by the early hours I think we're going to start to see a bit more cloud arrive from the Atlantic. That will limit the frost in the northwest, and it'll be a grey day in western Scotland with some drizzle over the hills. Elsewhere, brighter skies, the best of the sunshine in the east, but that cloudier look will become more prevalent through Saturday and Sunday, limiting frost and fog by night, but staying dry.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. Rod Little on the way, but first, Brendan O'Neill is tonight's outsider. Amid the Commons' chaos today, the Prime Minister announced that Plan BS, that's what I've called it, will thankfully end next Thursday as masks, COVID passports and work-from-home orders are all scrapped. Health Secretary Sajid Javid said in his Downing Street press conference this evening that we now must learn to live with the virus, but sadly stop short of declaring the pandemic's finish line in sight. And as usual, and I predicted this, the British mainstream broadcast media were doing their best to demand the government do not liberate at all and instead introduce more restrictions.
What is the public health justification for ending the requirement to self-isolate if infected? And if the government does bring that forward, is it prepared to do so against the guidance of the WHO during a global pandemic?
In Prime Minister's questions today, Labour called on the government to publish the scientific evidence supporting the PM's decision to move to Plan A. Do you plan on doing that?
The latest recorded daily deaths figure is 359. You're now lifting restrictions. Is this the kind of daily death toll you think the country has to be comfortable with as part of the shift to living with COVID?
Can you rule out a return of Plan B if another variant of concern emerges?
Same old, folks. Now, I've called these Plan BS measures from the start because we never needed them in the first place. So I'm glad this massive government overreach has been stopped. But will the lockdown fanatics and politics and the media, like those that we just saw, try to rewrite history and cunningly deny such rabid support for restrictions when the damage of their actions becomes clear? Well, Brendan is here to analyse this further. And Brendan, I see this happening already. Remember that mad woman, Devi Schroeder, from Scotland? She's one of the main advisors to Nicola Sturgeon during this pandemic, and she is a zero COVID fanatic. And I genuinely believe that does make you mad because you can never bring a virus down to zero. She's written an article today, Brendan O'Neill, for The Guardian, where she's starting to say, oh, we should try and learn with COVID. But I'm sorry, it's too late, Brendan, because we won't forget the damage that folk like her caused.
Exactly right. And I think two things are happening at the same time at the moment. On the one hand, the lockdown fanatics can't quite let go of restrictions. They love the power that the restrictions gave them. So this is why all those journalists are saying to Boris, can we really scrap Plan B? Should we carry on with more restrictions for the future? And that's also why some of the modelers and the scientists, they want to keep restrictions for as long as possible, because it gives them a sense of authority, it gives them a sense of celebrity, and it gives them a sense of power over the little people. So Sadiq Khan, for example, the tin pot tyrant of London, is going to keep the mask mandate on public transport because he loves the power he has over the little people of London. But at the same time as that's going on, I think we're also going to see a bit of a reverse ferret, and people will start to deny that they supported the severe lockdown, especially the first one in 2020, which we now know had devastating consequences on life, on health, and on the economy. So there's going to be a contradictory process for the next few months, I think. On the one hand, they'll say, let's carry on with restrictions. On the other hand, they'll start to distance themselves from the tyranny they supported early on.
And we are seeing it, Brendan, aren't we? We're seeing it every day. But the difference with 2020 and 2021 and 2022 is that these people cannot erase their words. So yesterday, for example, I called out Sky News and Independent Sage, who at the start of December were warning that Omicron was going to be the worst variant yet. We cannot let these people forget, Brendan, their actions, because otherwise they could do this to us again.
That's absolutely the right point. And that's what the public has got to bear in mind. They've got to bear in mind the fact that the lockdown didn't come out of thin air. Someone made it up. So modelers pushed it, politicians went with it, and journalists cheered it on every step of the way. And we have to remember that. I think what's going to happen is people are going to start feeling embarrassed about the fact that they supported lockdown in the first severe lockdown. And I think in a few years' time, you'll be hard-pressed to find anyone who will admit to have supporting lockdown. I think it will become an embarrassing thing to have done. You know, we left people to die on their own. We left dementia sufferers with no visitors from loved ones to think that they'd been abandoned. We closed down schools. We shut down the economy. We put democracy itself on ice, and we banned the right to protest. All of these severe restrictions. And I think one of the worst things we did is we really clamped down on debate about alternative policies to lockdown. Anyone, and you will remember this yourself, Dan, anyone who raised alternative ideas or alternative policies was shot down, demonized, witch hunted, like the Great Barrington Declaration authors, for example. So not only did they enforce a severe clampdown on civil liberty, they also restricted the ability of people to dissent and discuss. And that's a real problem.
I was called a lockdown denier. All I wanted was genuine debate about what we were doing. Even before the first lockdown, Brendan, in March 2020, I said on my radio show, I was at Talk Radio at the time, I said, no measures should be put into law. Everything should be guidance in this country. And you know what, Brendan, naively back then, and I think I was very naive when I look back, I just assumed that would be the case because we had a libertarian prime minister. But very quickly, folk like you, folk like me, we were called granny killers, we were called COVID deniers, we were called lockdown deniers. But I'm sorry, we have been proven to be right.
Yeah, and one of the most frustrating things is that people like us and a few others too, we were told that we just wanted to let the disease rip, even though there were no vaccines at the time, there was no treatment really, we didn't understand the virus. Evil people like us wanted it to run rampant through the population. But in fact, what we were arguing for was guidance, was a trust in ordinary people, and was for voluntaristic acts of self-restriction in certain situations. And that's another thing that's been proven by the Omicron variant. People are capable of doing that. Around Christmas time and before Christmas, people in this country voluntarily changed their behavior. They started going out a little bit less. They didn't visit elderly relatives if they were infected, because people can be trusted to make the right decision.
Indeed, and of course,
the lack of trust was a real problem.
Yeah, and of course, it is the rampant restrictions that Boris Johnson made law that have come and bit him on the bottom, Brendan O'Neill, and he will rue that day probably forevermore. Thank you so much, Brendan. We'll speak again next week. It's 10 p.m. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Coming up on a seismic day in politics, which saw Boris Johnson's premiership hang in the balance and Plan B restrictions scrapped. I'm asking, should scheming Red Wall MPs be more loyal to the PM, who arguably got them elected? And is it time for society to be rid of face masks once and for all? Guidance be damned. I'll debate both those topics with my superstar panel, the columnist and broadcaster Emily Carver, publican and campaigner Adam Brooks, and political and royal commentator Daisy McAndrew. Plus, we'll take a first look at Amazon's bank-busting Lord of the Rings TV series.
7 for the Dwarf Lords, in their halls of stone.
All of that and the media buzz throughout the hour. As Brexit helps Britain's economy shrug off the price of the pandemic, isn't it time everyone hailed our freedom from the EU shackles? The uncompromising Rod Liddle sticks two fingers up at Ramona's as he brings the cold hard facts in Uncancelled at 10:40. Are your political views having a disastrous effect on your romantic life? Now, I only ask because the very glamorous Daily Mail columnist Emily Hall went viral after declaring herself too right-wing for love. She'll be here to tell her story in a few minutes. Plus, I'll bring you a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages and crown another Greatest Britain and Union jackass. But first, the news headlines at 10 with Tamsin Roberts.
Dan, thank you. Here are the top stories from the GB newsroom. The Health Secretary says the Omicron variant is in retreat as he confirmed plans to lift Plan B restrictions in England next week. At a COVID briefing, Sajid Javid said the guidance to work from home will end immediately. Face masks won't be required in public places from next Thursday, and they'll no longer be mandatory in classrooms from tomorrow. Speaking to GB News, Joe Campion from the National Deaf Children's Society says it's a relief.
We've always said that public health needs to be a priority, but obviously the specific needs of deaf children matter too. And this has been a really difficult time for them, and they've waited a really long time for it to be safe for face masks to not be used in classrooms. And so we're just relieved on their behalf that they no longer need to face this really challenging situation.
Downing Street says Boris Johnson expects to lead the Tories in the next general election and will fight any vote of no confidence launched against him. It follows the MP for Bury South, Christian Wakeford, defecting from the Conservatives to the Labour Party. The Prime Minister claims the Tories will regain the seat at the next election, but former Conservative Minister David Mellor thinks Boris is a liability.
He doesn't appear to be someone who thinks that the rules apply to him, and there are endless examples of that. But the real problem with Boris, one of the reasons why I think this time probably the game is up for Boris, is what is coming down the pike. I mean, we're talking about these parties in May 2020. I'm much more concerned with what's going to happen in May 2022 and thereafter.
A man has been remanded into custody after appearing in court charged with the murder of 23-year-old Aisling Murphy in Ireland. The school teacher was killed near a canal in Tullamore last Wednesday. 31-year-old Joseph Pushka was heckled as he was brought from a police car to a special court sitting in County Offaly. A second man who was arrested in connection with the murder has been released without charge. British Airways has joined Emirates and Air India in cancelling a number of US flights over 5G safety concerns. It follows fears that transmissions from signal towers near US airports could disrupt planes' navigation systems. AT&T and Verizon responded by pausing the rollout of 5G to avoid further flight disruptions.
Might affect what's called the radar altimeter, which essentially more or less tells the pilot how far away he is from the ground in bad weather, particularly when visibility is not that good.
Greg Pollock there. That's all from me. Now back to Dan Wootton Tonight.
And it's the time for tomorrow's News Tonight, now on our Media Buzz. First newspapers hot off the press. Return to the office. That's the headline in tomorrow's Metro. In a statement today, Boris Johnson announced Plan BS restrictions will end next week and the requirement to self-isolate after catching COVID should end by the 24th of March. So that's their splash. But of course, those words from David Davis, in the name of God, go, feature strongly. The Eye says Johnson clings onto power for now. The publication reports other potential Tory defectors are in talks with Labour and quotes a former Conservative minister saying even if he wins a confidence vote, he'll have to keep going through the streets like Henry II being flagellated by the public. I don't see how that stops. I think that's a little bit harsh. My superstar panel, back with me now, the columnist and broadcaster Emily Carver, the publican and campaigner Adam Brooks, and the political and royal commentator Daisy McAndrew. Now, as the Tory MP for Barry South, Christian Wakeford, defected to Labour today, Boris Johnson is reportedly struggling to quell a so-called pork pie plot, with dozens of Red Wall MPs threatening a coup. So a group of around 20 newbie Tories met for crisis talks about the PM in the office belonging to Alicia Kearns, the MP for Rutland and Melton, home to the pork pie. And it's not going down well with Cabinet, according to political editor at the Times, Stephen Swinford, who quotes an insider saying, "It's pretty sickening. They were only elected because of him. Most of them are a load of nobodies. It's nuts." The tensions was very palpable today in a fiery PMQs, with MPs braying for the Prime Minister's resignation. And as the heat cranked up, Deputy Leader of No Opposition Angela Rayner was even emboldened to showboat.
Our history will remain history, Mr. Speaker. It will show, it will show, it will show.
She needs to grow up, doesn't she? She needs to grow up. But I guess we should just be thankful that she chose cheap slapstick laughs over another foul-mouthed tirade today. Well, as the drama continues to unfold, there are now conflicting reports about the success of the pork pie plot, with Daily Telegraph Associate Editor Christopher Hope saying letters currently stand at nearly 40 and within touching distance of the 54 needed to trigger that vote of no confidence in Johnson. But others are reporting that some Tories are withdrawing their letters. So, Adam Brooks, should these MPs show more loyalty to Boris Johnson, who, in the case of the Red Wall MPs, are arguably the only reason that they're actually in office in the first place?
You could say that. They definitely rode the Boris brand, didn't they? They also rode the Brexit wave.
Yeah.
So, yes, they've got to understand that they are there because of Boris and Brexit. So, yeah, I think they're trying to manipulate themselves into a better position, and I think it's backfiring, to be fair.
I mean, Daisy, it's pretty bad, isn't it, that they have shown no loyalty to Boris Johnson, right?
I think I can completely see why people would think that. And as I was saying earlier, Dan, actually defecting to another party is a really, really big deal in the House of Commons. Having said that, yes, they only got where they are because of Boris's popularity, but Boris's popularity was sort of built on hot air and fluff. And that's been blown away in some ways. And now, the things that people never used to mind about him, because they thought he'd be quite fun to go to the pub with, that he didn't seem very trustworthy, that he didn't seem to have a good relationship with the truth, that he perhaps wasn't reliable and sound and solid. A lot of those things were things that people either didn't mind or actually quite liked about him. Now that he has, as many people would see it, let us down, I don't think that they owe Boris very much at all in some ways. And as we were saying, if you look at the polls in those seats, there's a poll out tonight, because as things stand, only 3 of those Red Wall constituencies would remain Conservative if there was an election tomorrow.
Polls. If we believed the polls, we would have had Hillary Clinton in the White House and we would still be a member of the EU right
absolutely,
now.
And sorry, but if you think, does Boris Johnson owe something to them, or do they owe something to Boris Johnson?
Well, look, Emily, it's interesting because I want to mention this report by Tony Diver, who's one of the main political correspondents at the Daily Telegraph, who says 5 more Tory MPs are considering defecting to Labour after the success of what is now being described as Operation Domino. These people need to think about their voters. Stop thinking about their own careers and think about their voters.
Well, I mean, the charge levelled at Boris Johnson is that he is only out for himself, that his, policies are only skin deep, that he has no vision, and so on. But some of these potential defectors are showing themselves to be just the same, if it's true that there are 5 potential defectors, which I find hard to believe. But I do think that, to put a positive spin on things perhaps, is that Boris Johnson clearly, and his team have clearly acknowledged that people want him to bring back those policies that won him the last election, and with this Operation Red Meat and so on. And also, one needs to remember that at this period in the election cycle, most of the time the governing party aren't doing too well. No. Right, in the polls.
Yes, exactly.
He was riding high for a long time, way longer than previous prime ministers. And yes, this is a massive blip, and yes, a lot of people will have lost trust in it. But I actually do think that if he brings back those conservative policies, he will win back support, because there is no one else.
Who do they think? Who do they really think is going to win the next
and is going to do a better job? Well, indeed.
No.
And Daisy, look, these midterm slumps are very usual. And actually, if you speak to some political insiders, they'll say, if you have a government that doesn't have a midterm slump, it means they're actually not doing the hard yards. They're not doing any work. Blair had the midterm slump. Cameron did.
And that's why, very often a protest vote, like a Liberal Democrat vote or a Green vote, normally does very well. The difference with this midterm slump is it's not just a midterm slump with the Conservative Party. It is Boris Johnson. And, of course, as you quite rightly said, Boris Johnson was a very big part of why these seats were won. He is also going to be a very big part of why...
Of if they're lost.
Yeah, of if
but that is an if
which
at
is
this
which is
point.
the danger if you put all your eggs in one basket on one politician, and that politician, the facade comes down, or people change their mind about him.
Or you back him. Or you
I would
back
say
him.
that the disillusionment, of course, is not just with the sleaze and the scandals. There are a lot of Tory members and general public Tory voters who have been disillusioned with the net zero agenda, the rising cost of living, what they've
and how he's dealt with the pandemic.
Exactly. Look, I said last week, I've loved Boris. I've loathed Boris in the last 18 months.
Yeah.
And today, the speech and the lifting of Plan B and all the other things, and even mentioning that they're going to maybe have a vote on the Coronavirus Act before March.
Did it give you hope?
It's given me hope, and it's made me think, hold on, let's stick with him.
But also, Dan, there is something, sorry to be a bit of a parliamentary nerd, but MPs are not delegates. They're representatives, and they're meant to represent all of their constituents, not just the ones who voted for them. And the reason that most MPs don't automatically trigger a by-election if they cross the floor is because of that.
I know, but come on, let's be honest. Let's be honest. No one was voting for this loser, Christian Wakeford. No one had heard of this complete loser. They were voting for Boris in Bury South, and he has let down the voters of Bury South. Emily, I just want to ask you about this speaking of immature losers. No, actually, sorry, I shouldn't stoop to her level. Angela Rayner, come on, what was she doing today?
It's like when someone goes, shh, when you're getting, when you're in the middle of saying something. It's one of those things that's so annoying when you're showing it. I mean, obviously, it's not on the same level as what she said before with the Tory scum comments, but it is just indicative of her type of politician. I mean, Angela Rayner, I don't think too many people take her seriously. She does have some appeal, though. She does have some appeal, but I think it's very limited, and I think she probably...
Daisy, what did you think of her waving in the face of Boris today?
I didn't particularly mind it, but I watched PMQs in its entirety, and I'm always torn between being somebody who loves Parliament and has spent a long time in the press gallery and then trying to be dispassionate about it and trying to imagine that I was foreign and watching this and just... And I
thought they were all embarrassing.
I did turn to my other half today. We were watching together and said, we both said, this is really embarrassing.
Yeah.
The speaker was having to shout at them all, and they're all being
disgraceful.
So
it was disgraceful, Adam.
Students watching that today, and they want to get into politics. It's embarrassing, isn't it? It really is,
Totally.
But I think the Partygate stuff's embarrassing. The fact that there's so much else going on in the country. There's so much else going on with our politics and our international relations.
Which is why you want us to move on from Partygate, and I do understand it. And look, there'll be a lot of people sitting at home, Emily, saying, hallelujah, they don't want to hear another word about a party at number 10 Downing Street. Now, I've said it before, folks, as you know, e-scooters are just dangerous killing machines. And today we have more proof. In an outrageous video posted online, an e-scooter rider can be seen tearing along a 3-lane London road at more than 50 miles per hour. The video was shot by an astonished motorer who could barely keep up with the speeding scooter. Take a look. You won't believe it. Now, there has been criticism of the person who filmed that video too for also acting dangerously, but to me, this just highlights the need for proper rules to stop these menaces. I was actually speaking to my team today about these e-scooters, and literally at that moment, because I was walking down the street, at that moment, I saw a young woman nearly knocked to the ground by one of these killing machines.
Was that me? That happened to me. I ended up in A&E.
No.
I took one of those ones in Bournemouth.
But were you on the killing machine or were you hit by one?
I was on the killing machine.
Oh, yeah, I've come No, this was a poor woman walking down the street. So what, it's actually very dangerous if you're riding one of these killing machines.
I agree that they're a menace. Some people might argue that this is good, it's innovative and we should keep these things.
If he hit a stone or a pothole, he's going over.
Finished.
He's dead.
He's finished.
You know?
Exactly.
I've come off at one at 20 mile an hour and I nearly knocked myself out.
Totally.
So.
And look, I believe in liberty, obviously, but the problem is our roads, our footpaths are not built for these killing machines, and we've got to get them under control. Daisy McAndrew, Adam Brooks, Emily Carver, do stand by, because coming up after today's Plan B announcement, is it time for society to be rid of those awful face muzzles once and for all? Guidance be damned. I'll grill my superstar panel as the media buzz continues, plus more of those front pages. But next, is love off limits for right-wingers in this woke world? Well, Emily Hill, who went viral after admitting her romantic life has suffered due to her political views, will tell all after the break.
Hello again. Skies have cleared widely across the UK, and that means overnight a widespread frost, and there'll be some wintry flurries in some spots, mainly for the north of Scotland because of the Arctic wind that has arrived now behind this cold front. That cold front cleared the cloud and some outbreaks of rain earlier in the day, and now we've got clearer but colder weather across all parts. And under those widely clear skies, temperatures will rapidly fall overnight. We'll keep a bit more of a wind in the far north and east, and that wind will drive further wintry flurries into the north of Scotland and for parts of eastern England as well. But where we've got clear skies elsewhere, a widespread frost, as low as -5 across sheltered parts of Scotland. In the far north of Scotland, a bit more cloud and some of those snow flurries to begin things on Thursday, perhaps a centimetre or so at lower levels, more so on the higher ground, and likewise for the east coast of England. Soon enough, those showers ease away. Widely clear skies or sunshine for many on Thursday afternoon, but temperatures lower than recent days because of that Arctic air, and feeling even colder if you're in the wind that will be in the north and the east. The wind does ease a little overnight and it changes direction subtly, but for most it's light winds, clear skies, and with cold air in place, temperatures falling once again. Widely below freezing across much of the UK, and in parts of southern England as low as -5 Celsius, so in some places the coldest night of the winter. But in the north and the west, by the early hours, I think we're going to start to see a bit more cloud arrive from the Atlantic. That will limit the frost in the northwest, and it'll be a grey day in western Scotland with some drizzle over the hills. Elsewhere, brighter skies, the best of the sunshine in the east, but that cloudier look will become more prevalent through Saturday and Sunday, limiting frost and fog by night, but staying dry.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Rod Little and a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages coming up. But first, lovelorn writer Emily Hill caused a huge stir recently when she declared herself too right-wing to find love in a heartrending piece in the Daily Mail that went viral. So with woke warriors now apparently dominating the dating scene, is love only for lefties these days? Well, I'm delighted to welcome the talented columnist and author of Bad Romance to the studio tonight. Emily, I mean, look at you. You are stunning. You are intelligent. I cannot believe that men would be so shallow that they don't want to date you because of your political views.
What is wrong with them? I'm blonde, I dye my hair, don't I? I wear mascara, I wear black dresses. I don't know, you need to teach the men a thing or two, Dan.
Well, yeah, I find them pathetic and spineless. And also, there are so many great love stories about folk who are on other sides of the political divide because it makes your life quite interesting.
Yeah,
you can argue.
Montague and Capulet, Remainer and Brexiteer, like, keep it feisty, you know, like, it's got to be wrong to be right, you know.
But is it these apps, Emily, is that's what's changed it? Because I read your piece and you said that in these apps, these dating apps, which are a whole other crazy world, you're actually asked to define your political position.
Yeah, you do. Well, the thing is the weird thing is like going into the pandemic, I didn't think that I was right-wing. I was up for paying taxes for the NHS and for education, for our children. And all of a sudden, like the Swedish model of like looking after everybody else, became like actually giving people their freedom. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'm still on Sweden's side here. And apparently that made me like a totally beyond the pale, a vicious right-winger, one of those sort of horrible people, fascists even, that, you know, that you read about on the news. And was sort of a devotee of you and Julia Hartley-Brewer and Alison Pearson and Peter Hitchens, you know, proper journalists who are doing their job, which we all need to do. That is our job, to ask questions. And so questioning the whole thing. And what I learned is you can't do that. I don't know how your social life is faring, but you do not want to be like questioning. I mean, you've seen that survey, obviously, that shows that, you know, if you want to be sexy, you've got to wear a face mask.
I couldn't believe that. Yeah, face masks make you better looking. Yeah. It's all propaganda. And I do judge people if they judge you for your political views. I mean, when it comes to me, I don't hide who I am. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't.
Yeah.
But I cannot stand people who will make a judgment simply because what I think politically. Yeah. It's interesting though, Emily, in your piece, you say that older men are now almost pretending to be social justice warriors in order to find younger women. So they say, oh, I'm a big fan of the Black Lives Matter movement. I support LGBTQIA. And you're like, that's actually probably not how you feel, but it makes it more palatable on these sites.
It's really interesting because obviously, like, I'm a journalist first and foremost. I don't just go in for personal confessions. So, you know, when you kind of sense a trend in society, you investigate it. So I was sort of looking around for other people's stories, and it was actually a friend of mine who was looking for an older man who said, like, she was just suspicious. She was just thinking, well, I don't know whether I believe it. And it's, I think it's a trend called woke fishing, where you pretend to be more woke than you actually are. And it follows on from catfishing, where you pretend to be incredibly good looking, use somebody else's photos. And hatfishing, which is another big thing on apps, where you basically wear a cap to
Why would you do it? But that makes no sense to me, because when I speak to women, they don't want a woke new age man.
Oh, I think they do. I think that
they want an old school bloke
who throw them down and Yeah. Well, the thing is, no, I don't think so. Like, I think going into the pandemic, I was like, I don't know. I had societies kind of telling me I needed some kind of man who worked for a corporation rather than a dad, like a man like my dad who drove a white van. Like you kind of get told what you're supposed to do. You kind of go into it thinking you were some kind of fey intellectual, and you come out wanting Joe Rogan because he's a MMA fighter with a brain.
So how are we going to deal with this, Emily? Because it is, as I say, you're too intelligent, you're too beautiful to stay off the market simply because you have quote-unquote right-wing views, which actually, by the way, are just common sense, obviously. So I think we're going to have to help you. We're going to have to help you find the perfect man. And I imagine after tonight there'll be no shortage of offers.
Well, I hope next time you'll have me on with 3 men behind a panel, and you'll do the stiller, and we'll have Graham with a great recap, and we will find me love. I trust you implicitly.
And just to clarify, Emily, finally, you're not saying that you only want to date a man who has the same views as you. You would be open to dating a man who was on the left.
Yeah. I don't. To me, it just doesn't really matter. It's just being dismissed. And also, as you say, it's common sense, because I think a lot of with pandemic and with everything else, you just think, well, it's just common sense. And and it's like with a lot of things now, it's like we're being told that 2 and 2 make 5. And I'm just like, it doesn't.
Well, don't worry. Everyone's coming around to our way of thinking now anyway. And they're pretending that they never supported lockdowns and all of that crazy stuff. So it's probably going to get a lot easier, Emily Hill, in the weeks and months to come. But thank you so much for sharing your story today. The author and journalist, author of Bad Romance. Emily, thank you so much for being here tonight. Now, coming up, it's been a torrid time for the PM, but is his ultimate political achievement, getting Brexit done, starting to pay dividends? Columnist extraordinaire Rod Liddell investigates in Uncancelled at 10:40. But next, England is unmasked, technically, but will peer pressure to muzzle up continue? That's coming up in the Media Buzz, along with more newspaper front pages. Don't go anywhere.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. Time to return to tomorrow's news tonight, now in our Media Buzz. And lots of front pages just in. Let's go straight to the Daily Telegraph that says, Johnson, I won't quit if rebels force vote. Now, Number 10 have said the PM is, quote, the best man for the job. And when asked directly if he would fight any no-confidence motion, an official spokesperson for Boris said yes. David Davis MP, who begged Boris to resign in the Commons, admitted to the publication that he believes the PM will have to be dragged out, kicking and screaming. The paper also reports that 5 more Tory MPs from the 2019 intake are considering following in the footsteps of that disloyal charlatan and Chancellor Christian Wakeford and defecting to Labour. I really hope they don't. In the name of God, go. The Guardian also leads with that call from Davis for Bojo to resign. And despite the calls for that, the PM supporters are saying he now has breathing space for a fight back. But Tory backbenchers to buy their support are reportedly attempting to broker a deal with Boris, agreeing to back him in any confidence vote if he ditches a £12 billion a year tax rise this spring. Great news, this, actually, because I think Boris needs to do that, and it comes as the paper reports that as many as 30 letters may have been submitted out of the 54 needed. The Independent now, they actually lead with the news that Plan BS restrictions are said to be axed. However, hospital leaders are warning that the NHS is still at risk from coronavirus, with the NHS Federation chief saying COVID-19 has not magically disappeared. OK, it really annoys me when people talk about that, because actually ICU admissions are at the lowest point since July. And you know, deaths at the moment, which, let's be honest, that's the most important thing, they are below the 5-year average. So stop terrifying everyone, The Independent. You are so irresponsible as a newspaper. Now, let's go to The Sun. As Bojo pork pie chart shows, battle PM crust ahead. So the pain of COVID laws gave the PM and the country a slice of good news. It comes as the PM battled through a day of extraordinary drama, coming out just ahead of the pork pie plotters. And it's interesting because down at the bottom they say he's in a pickle because of the revolting MPs, but because of the end of COVID rules, he's cutting the mustard. In the Express, and we say it all the time, this is the newspaper that loves Boris Johnson, come what may. And they say, taking the line from David Davis, in the name of party unity, go and back the PM. Demands for Tory unity grew after that red wall charlatan Christian Wakeford defected to Labour, and ex-Brexit Minister Davis effectively told the PM to resign. The Daily Star, they're not in love with Boris. It's fair to say. They've branded him a lame duck who still refuses to do the right thing. And they've actually mocked him up as a bath toy with little blonde hair there outside Number 10. Plus a rather jovial take on the potential outbreak of war in Ukraine, where there is a huge military presence on the Russian border. World War III, is Vladdy stupid? And I think that is something we can all agree with the Daily Star on. Let me bring tonight's superstar panel back in now. The columnist and broadcaster Emily Carver, the publican and campaigner Adam Brooks, and the political and royal commentator Daisy McAndrew. Now, as we just saw in those newspapers, Boris Johnson finally announced the lifting of Plan BS measures, and with it, most importantly, the unmuzzling of the people of England. Yes, hallelujah. From next Thursday, mask wearing will no longer be mandated by law. But there's still guidance to use face coverings in enclosed or crowded spaces, particularly when you come into contact with people you don't naturally meet. And just watch how lockdown hysterics will cling to this guidance. Shops, hospitality venues and transport operators will no doubt use their own discretion to demand the continued use of face coverings. These useless, grotty cloths must be eradicated completely from our daily lives, as I said yesterday in my digest. I am very disturbed to read today the usual morons are encouraging Boris to keep the country muzzled.
I have never felt stronger that mask mandates must go too, both in terms of law and guidance. So good on you, Boris. You went half of the way. You got rid of it in law. That's the most important thing. But let's just banish the guidance too. Predictably, Labour's obsession with masks continues. The Mayor of London, the failed Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, will still insist on muzzling men and women who use London's public transport. And just listen to the rabid MP, Richard Bergen, who refuses to follow the science.
The rush to remove the requirement for masks, including on public transport, will cause people to fall ill and die unnecessarily. Isn't this all about saving the Prime Minister's political skin, not about protecting public health? What a moral failure and what a bad way to go.
You are the moral failure, Richard Bergen, for terrifying the population in that way, without any facts. Maybe he should just move to Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland, where mask mandates continue to be imposed, which, by the way, I'm going to continue campaigning for. So, Emily Carver, isn't it just time we banish these horrible muzzles from our lives, and the devolved nations have to follow suit, surely?
Yes, and I think they'll time it so that it doesn't look like they're following Boris Johnson's decision. But the irony of Richard Bergen saying that this is about politics, the reason why they're doing this, he's doing it because he knows that the teaching unions and the other unions want to keep the masks. He's not doing this because he believes in the science of masks and that people will die. It's a political move. He stood in the House of Commons not wearing a mask. Is he not afraid that he will kill his fellow colleagues? I mean it's ridiculous.
Anna Brooks, that was truly outrageous, wasn't it?
It was a comedy show, Dan.
You just have to laugh. You have to laugh or you'd cry.
I find that man so funny. Even when he's talking about serious issues, I laugh at him. He's a joke.
And we have to unmuzzle now, don't we, Adam?
100%. And look, let's look. Even the government's review on school masks in school, they didn't do anything. So we've got to conclude that in the greater community, they don't do anything as well.
I mean, by the way, that was one of the most shameful decisions of this pandemic. And while I'm trying to be supportive of the Boris Johnson as much as I can, I mean, the fact that he allowed masks to be introduced in school...
That was weak.
When there was no evidence for it. Oh, it makes me mad. Daisy McAndrew, why do people like you love masks so much? Why are you so into these things?
People like you. You're so judgy. I don't love masks. I've never particularly liked masks.
But you don't think they're a big deal?
I don't think they... I mean,
Do you not feel so constrained and covered up when you have them on?
I don't think they're a big deal. I know they're not a big deal because I've read the science. And this is one of the problems with the pro-maskers, because they make out that they are a big deal.
They are not.
But they're like a loincloth that you wear on your face. You know, they're there to cover political modesty, or they're
But how do you feel? How do you feel when you have your face covered up?
The reason I say it's not a big deal is because it's one of those policies that people can put in place which don't necessarily really damage the economy or really damage anything, but they equally don't do much good, which is why I think they're not a big deal. But what I really think is they've become so divisive, and I know everything's become divisive, but I was just looking on Twitter and this wretched, hashtag wear a mask is trending.
Oh.
And the people
hashtag get a life.
And the people who are, either very, very anti, as you three are, or very, very pro, are just hurling abuse at each other. And I really don't like that. But equally, I just think that masks is a load of old
We've got to rip them off. From Thursday in England, when it's legal,
It's a massive deal that the government are implementing something that they don't have evidence for, regardless of whether it's that much of an inconvenience.
Forcing us to cover up the most important part of our body.
Some people, masks cause problems. I'm mildly epileptic. Now, I did last year, I've got some elderly customers, I did shifts in masks and I felt like I was going to pass out.
Totally.
Anxiety,
they're horrible things.
And an epileptic person can't get those sort of feelings.
No, indeed.
But just a way of showing the public they're doing something.
Yes, but equally, there are people who are very scared, people who have been shielding people.
Yeah, but it's not going to help them, and it will give them a false sense of security. But look, I want to move on quickly because breaking tonight, the Daily Mail leading with an exclusive story that Boris and Carrie Johnson's baby daughter was the family member hit by COVID last week. Baby Romy, who is 6 weeks old, reportedly suffered with the virus quite badly, but is now
on the mend. Boris Johnson did not appear in public for several days after last week's announcement, with many speculating he was avoiding further questions around his garden party apology. One does not simply walk into a Lord of the Rings project without a bumper budget. In a bid to compete with Peter Jackson's Oscar-winning movie trilogy, Amazon has broken the bank for their forthcoming adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's books at a cost of £341 million. It's thought to be the most expensive TV show ever. And today, the first teaser trailer for the show has been released, confirming its name and whetting the appetite of anxious fans ahead of its debut on September the 2nd.
One for the Dark Lord on his dark throne. In the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie.
Doesn't it look precious? Now, this first season, Rings of Power, was filmed in New Zealand, just like the classic movies. But because of Jacinda Ardern's ridiculous COVID policies, the second series is coming to be filmed in the UK. So at least there's one positive outcome of her madness. It does sound like the filming was a nightmare, actually, with production being shut down, executives barred from visiting the set, and the show's international cast trapped in the country for 2 years away from their families after arriving at the borders only to be told, "You shall not pass." Emily Carver, Adam Brooks, Daisy McAndrew, do stand by, because coming up I'm going to get my superstar panel to nominate today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. I will pick the winner. But before that, Boris Johnson could be circling the drain, but should he take some comfort in Brexit finally starting to pay off? Columnist Rod Liddle will be here in a matter of seconds. First, though, here's what's coming up in tomorrow's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, as NHS workers are forced to get jabbed in order to keep their jobs, Dr. Steve James, the brave medic who stood up to the Health Secretary, joins me to defend everyone's right to choose. What can be done to stop Brits eating themselves to death? TV star James Argent, who lost 13 stone after having life-saving surgery, believes support and not shame is the key to battling the obesity crisis. He'll discuss his incredible transformation. Plus, legendary US journalist Megyn Kelly and GBNews star Mark Dolan give their insight on the globe's biggest stories. And I'll break down the day's headlines with my superstar panel. The Tory grandee turned broadcaster Michael Portillo, political stalwart Christine Hamilton, and the author and journalist Amy Nicol. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Oh, it's going to be a goodie, but time now for Uncancelled. And you know this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. It's been a torrid week for the PM and an even worse 24 hours for reasons we've been discussing throughout the show. But just as Boris Johnson looks most in danger, are there signs his ultimate political achievement of getting Brexit done is starting to pay off? Rod Liddle joins me now on this. Rod, you think that actually, finally, we're getting proof that Boris has delivered on Brexit. Is that right?
Oh, I think more than that. I think we've got all the proof that is there that you could possibly want. And this stuff came upon me like an epiphany when I was on social media earlier today talking to people about Brexit. And there are still out there Remoaners who will not allow a single gain that we have got from Brexit. They will not allow for anything. And so let's run through a few of those things which we now have. According to an OECD report out this week, of the G7 nations, Britain has the fastest growing economy. The fastest growing economy of all the major nations in the world.
Good news.
Number one. Number two, PricewaterhouseCoopers in its latest survey, CEO survey, of big execs in America say that Britain is now the number one target for US businesses for investment, ahead even of China and Germany. We have the lowest unemployment in Europe, Germany aside. Sterling, I don't know if you remember, George, Cameron and Osborne during their Project Fear stuff in 2016, saying that sterling would sink to record lows.
Oh, I
Sterling
do.
is now at a 23-month high against the euro. 1.20, a 23-month high. But that's not all. Job vacancies are at their highest for years and years and years, and at the highest in Europe. And how about this? This is an interesting one, because I remember very well George Osborne telling us that as soon as we left the European Union, our houses would be worthless. They would, the value of our houses would collapse. The latest news is that house prices in this country have gone up by 10% from November 2020 to November 2021, the highest rise in years. So in other words, all that stuff from Project Fear was rubbish. Now, you know, I can see there are problems with Brexit. I can see we've got Northern Ireland to sort out. I can see there are problems as well in hiring staff for some firms. I accept that Brexit brings with it. What really enrages me is that the Remoaners will not accept anything. They will not accept that any gains have been made as a consequence of Brexit. And of course, the greatest gain as a consequence of Brexit was that vaccine rollout, because we would not have had that vaccine rollout had we been members of the European Union.
Which was a point that Boris Johnson made earlier tonight. And Rod Little, I think it's so important that you're talking about this, actually, because we can't just forget Project Fear, because Project Fear is why so many millions of folk up and down the country are struggling to regain trust in the political establishment.
Well, that's right. And, you know, we were told at the time of the, after the Brexit referendum, that this had been an appalling campaign. And we were pointed towards the fact that the Leave side had made various totally unsubstantiated claims. And indeed, some of them were ludicrous. You remember the side of the bus stuff and the money that could be hypothecated for the National Health Service. I'm telling you, Dan, if I thought that all the money we saved from the leaving the EU had gone straight into the NHS, I'd have voted Remain immediately. It would not have happened. But what we forget is the lie after lie after lie from the Remainer side, from the Remainer side. And they're still at it now. Every single thing that goes wrong is put down to Brexit. And yet they ignore all these incredible gains that we've got. Now, I'm not saying this out of a wish to dig Boris out of the large hole which he has been busily digging for himself these last few weeks, not remotely. But I think there are a couple of things which he's got right. And one of them, obviously, was Brexit. We are doing very, very well indeed as a consequence of Brexit. The other, of course, is that he also faced down those SAGE people and has got us free of restrictions, or far more free than we have been hitherto. All we need now is to get rid of masks. And I would make one exception for getting rid of masks, and that is for Richard Bergen, who ought to have one actually stapled to his head.
He can wear one forever if he wants as punishment.
He is the thickest politician I have ever come across, and that includes David Lammy. I mean, you know, I don't know where we go from here.
Well, and he was actually spreading misinformation today, so it's very important he's called out. But I'm glad that you talk about SAGE, because I actually described the Omicron Fear campaign as Project Fear Mark II, Rod, because it was happening just before Christmas. And I guess the difference with Brexit Project Fear is we've been able to see immediately that it was a pack of lies.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. And in a way, Omicron was an epiphany for me in that everything which the scientists said in those first 2 weeks of December was later easily demonstrably wrong and untrue and fictitious. And you could see that immediately. And that was a rather wonderful thing about it. You know, I still think we were probably right to go into a lockdown back in March 2020. We didn't know what we were coping with. We were up against an unknown enemy, kind of. But they have become obsessed with their modelling, and their modelling is not accurate. And what we need now is, and I say this in incredibly heartfelt, for my own daughter who's at school, get the masks off the kids immediately and let them live a normal life.
Well, that was one of the most shameful decisions of the entire pandemic, in my view, because it was completely unnecessary. But, Rod, just coming back to Brexit, though, what about big Boris Johnson supporters, and we have many of them who watch every night, Rod, who would say to you, OK, well, this is a reason for you to give Boris Johnson another chance?
Well, that's certainly what the Daily Mail's saying, isn't it? Tomorrow morning, the Daily Mail is rallying around behind Boris. I think it's gone too far, if I'm absolutely honest. There are plenty of other people in the Conservative Party who were pro-Brexit and fought for Brexit to be accepted and to be won for us. I think there comes a time when the lies become so absurd, we seem as if we're living in a kind of surreal universe, and I think we've kind of reached that spot with Boris at the moment. That being said, if he resigned in the next few weeks, I think we would remember him for getting Brexit over the line, for winning that general election, for facing down the sage Cassandras, and for being right generally on the really big issues. But
which is exactly what he's saying. And you mentioned that Daily Mail front page, Rod, and I think it's worth just taking a look at that, actually, because we spoke earlier about their exclusive news story about Boris and Carrie's baby being hit by COVID, but perhaps much more significant, actually, this comment piece, a Daily Mail comment piece, which says, Putin poised to start a war, inflation soaring, yet a narcissistic rabble of Tory MPs are trying to topple PM who's leading us out of COVID. Today, as their plot crumbles, the Mail echoes one of their ringleaders to tell them, in the name of God, grow up. And Rod, I've been heading in this direction over the past few days, actually. I think all a leadership challenge is going to do right now, because Boris will win it, he will win it, so all it's going to do is cause ultimate instability, which we don't need at this moment as a country.
Yeah, I don't know, you're right that he'd win it. I'm not so sure that that's clear at all. Because Boris Johnson's relationship to the Conservative Party is transactional. If he can win a general election, they will have him. If he can't, they won't. And at the moment, he doesn't look like he's able to win a general election. And yes, we talk about Putin, we talk about inflation. I don't see that this government is doing anything about either of those things. I cannot see what it's doing. And it has taken 2 years for them to get to grips with an idea of levelling up, which of course was the promise to those red wall seats back in 2019, that we will level up this country. It hasn't happened. There have been some jobs come to Teesside, which we're very grateful for up here.
But they need to do more.
Generality, there hasn't been a levelling.
Yeah, and they need to do more, and I agree, and they will blame COVID, and I would say stop blaming COVID and get on with the job. But Rod Little, absolutely fascinating conversation. Thank you so much. Rod, of course, Associate Editor at The Spectator. But time now to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. My superstar panel back with me. Emily Carver, who's your nomination for Greatest Britain?
Just because she's been so fantastic. She wrote an article this week about how she was pilloried for being a lockdown sceptic, and now she's been proven right. And I think she speaks for a lot of us who were shouted down at the time. And there's been a lot of revisionism from some members of the media and some politicians since.
It was a brilliant column. I tweeted it, actually. So if you go to my Twitter page, you will see that column because it was so good. Adam Brooks, your Greatest Britain nominee. Sorry.
It's Alan Miller.
Oh, another great man.
Yeah, co-founder of the Together Declaration. He's become a good friend of mine. He's brought MPs, scientists, doctors, nurses and the general public together to fight vaccine passports, mandates. He's a great man. Well done, Alan.
And Daisy McAndrew, your Greatest Britain nominee.
I am nominating David Davis, partly for the historical context that he put his stabbing of Boris Johnson in the front rather than the back today, bringing up a quote from the great Leo Amery, in which that quote brought down Neville Chamberlain the next day. So that's obviously what David Davis was hoping to do.
Not going to happen, though, is it?
Bring down Boris Johnson tomorrow.
Not going to happen. Look, my Greatest Britain today is Alison Pearson. It was such a powerful column, and And Alison has been one of my absolute heroes during this pandemic, so that's a very good nomination, Emily Cover. Let's move on, though, to your Union Jackass. Who is yours today, Emily?
It's going to be Sky News. I was watching them earlier today and they decided to do a whole segment, a whole feature on what a little 4-year-old girl thought about Boris Johnson.
Let's have a little look at that, Emily.
In lockdown, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, he just went down to a party in lockdown. Did he?
Sky News will find any way to slag off the PM. Adam Brooks, your nomination.
It's Christian Wakeford.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, turning his back on his own voters. I think that's despicable.
And Daisy McAndrew, your Union Jackass nomination.
It's not an overtly political one, but it was, and I don't know if anyone else saw it, it was half of the Imperial University Challenge team who were incredibly rude this week to the rest of their panel. The two men, you can see, that's the captain, Michael Mays, who only conferred with the man on his left, who he was obviously good friends with, completely ignoring Mr. Zeng and Ms. Sherry.
Oh, gosh.
And
well, I didn't see it, and my advice is just don't watch the BBC. The winner, though, today's Union Jackass, certainly Christian Wakeford. What a loser. How dare you? Total traitor. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm back tomorrow from 9 p.m. Good night.
Hello again. Skies have cleared widely across the UK, and that means overnight a widespread frost, and there'll be some wintry flurries in some spots, mainly for the north of Scotland because of the Arctic wind that has arrived now behind this cold front. That cold front cleared the cloud and some outbreaks of rain earlier in the day, and now we've got clearer but colder weather across all parts. And under those widely clear skies, temperatures will rapidly fall overnight. We'll keep a bit more of a wind in the far north and east, and that wind will drive further wintry flurries into the north of Scotland and for parts of eastern England as well. But where we've got clear skies elsewhere, a widespread frost, as low as -5 across sheltered parts of Scotland. In the far north of Scotland, a bit more cloud and some of those snow flurries to begin things on Thursday, perhaps a centimetre or so at lower levels, more so on the higher ground, and likewise for the east coast of England. Soon enough, those showers ease away. Widely clear skies or sunshine for many on Thursday afternoon, but temperatures lower than recent days because of that Arctic air and feeling even colder if you're in the wind that will be in